Today, we are going to be talking about a guy called Addious, I think that's how you say his name, and you might know him as the guy who was the very first victor of Unnerfed Sakupen Circles. He verified the level. Unnerfed Sakupen Circles doesn't really have much different with it when it comes to the drop, besides one singular part, which is the wave spam, which looks like this in the unnerfed version. So yeah, he did that and 66p and everything before it in one run. It was a crazy achievement at the time. Even today, that is one of the hardest unrated achievements, and if placed on the list today, it would actually be around probably top 10 on the demon list, somewhere there. So yeah, it doesn't come to a surprise to you, this guy is cracked at playing Sakupen Circles stuff. He also beat Sakupen Circles at 1.1 speed, which is also crazy. So it shouldn't really come to that much of a surprise to you when I tell you that this guy yesterday was able to get 37 to 100 on Sakupen Circles with 0.03% opacity. Practically invisible. Obviously, you're going to be able to have some indicators on where you are with the portals, because when you look at this video, you can slightly see each portal. However, the actual gameplay of the level is pretty much non-existent. Actually, for a lot of devices, if you're just watching this video on YouTube, you can't even see the gameplay at all. You can only see the portals. So that's why a lot of people get confused as this being a straight up just a purely invisible copy. What's even crazier is this was done in 559 attempts. There's some insane demons that take me longer to do than that, and this guy's doing nearly completely invisible Sakupen Circles. Now yes, obviously it's a 37 to 100% run, it isn't a complete 0 to 100 completion. However, that is the entire wave. That is the actual difficult part in Sakupen Circles, just done nearly completely blind. Just to put into perspective how difficult this achievement is, if we go to the invisible levels list, which ranks levels that are completely invisible, so not just really low opacity, completely invisible, Sightless Sandstorm and Blind Blizzard are the two hardest completions. These were done ages ago by Bradenbolt, and they are completely invisible versions of Sunset Sandstorm and Black Blizzard. Now, on the unrated demon list, these two levels rank as 21 and 22, meaning they are harder than Firework. So, at the time, these were actually top 1 levels. When beaten, they were the hardest things ever beaten. And both of these levels are easier than the straight up normal Sakupen Circles without any opacity changes at all. What's even crazier is this isn't even the hardest achievement. If Sakupen Circles was actually fully beaten, 0 to 100, completely near blind, it still wouldn't be enough, because we have this person, Edward Ukraine, who literally did Invisible Slaughterhouse with 0.03% opacity, so the same opacity even, and he beat it. He completely completed it. And as you can see, similar to Sakupen Circles, if you're on a poor device, or if you're watching on a device with low brightness, you probably can't even see the gameplay. There's like nothing here. Obviously, there must be some indicators for these people to where they are when they're actually playing, because if not, they would just be doing this completely blind. So putting it on a very, very, very low opacity is giving some benefit. I've got a feeling it's the portals and not the actual gameplay. But this is still an incredible achievement. I don't get how people do this. Also, let's just admire the message here. I don't know, this level genuinely feels so easy. Sorry if this sounds like ego, but it's actually annoying. Let's just stop the copium and move it down. Borderline the plunge difficulty, even with this opacity. Yeah, that's a statement. I mean, look, I think that people can have their own opinions in the game, and this guy can have his. And honestly, for this guy's skill set, it probably does feel this easy. I mean, he wouldn't be able to do a level this difficult with 0.03% opacity if that was the case. However, Slaughterhouse is one of the most beaten levels in its difficulty bracket, and everyone who has beaten it relatively agrees is accurately placed. That's why Slaughterhouse has barely moved in recent times. Obviously, there'll be some people that find it easier and harder. Of course, that's bound to happen. But pretty much everyone agrees that it's harder than Firework, which is currently ranked 37, which is way above the plunge. Like, the plunge is all the way down to 64, so I just don't think that's true for the majority of people. And if you play a level like Slaughterhouse a lot, you're bound to find it easier. Like, for example, the guy that we're mainly focusing on here, Addious. Yeah, the barely invisible Sakupen Circles completion was yesterday, but as you can see, of course, he verified unnerfed Sakupen Circles. He plays Sakupen End, which is a stupid spam challenge thing if you've seen that level. 1.1 times speed on Sakupen Circles, like we mentioned. And he plays all the other versions of Sakupen Circles as well. Like, he's done Exen's Limit, which is a remake of Sakupen Circles for a contest that happened a while back. And he's just cracked at Wave. Look at all the spam challenges he's done, and levels like Cylon Silhouette, or how do you even say this level? Is it Silhouette? I hope it is. It's obvious when you've played a level this much, that click pattern is going to be engraved in you, so something like a barely invisible Sakupen Circles won't seem as hard. Now, will Addious actually continue and beat this thing completely from zero? I have no clue. I looked through his Twitter and his YouTube. From what I can tell, there isn't anything. Usually someone proves me wrong in the chat, so I'm sure someone will comment if that's the case or not. However, I don't think any of us are gonna argue that he can't do that. If he did this in 500 attempts, then yeah, you could totally do it from zero. What I find interesting is I feel like levels like Tidal Wave are in the similar like accessibility range in terms of how they play as something like Slaughterhouse, and so maybe a decade down the line we can actually see people try and tackle that level with low opacity when it's a lot further down on the list. We can use the same argument that we did all those years ago where we argue about the skill limit of GD. We say Cataclysm's the skill limit, and then Bloodbath's verified, and then Sakupen Hell's verified, and then you get other levels, and we can just say that for this. Like, I'm sure most people when Blind Blizzard and Sightless Sandstorm came out, they thought that was the limit. That's crazy. And then now we're seeing near invisible versions of Sakupen Circles and Slaughterhouse get verified. These are levels that dwarf these levels in difficulty even in their uninvisible state, you know? So I don't think it's that far off to say that in like a decade's time we could see that happen. I think it would be pretty interesting if we see some of the current top players like Zoink try and do levels invisible. Like, obviously people like Popoff have beaten Slaughterhouse 3 times in a row, so I don't see why they couldn't do the nearly invisible Slaughterhouse or even a invisible Slaughterhouse. And if Popoff can do it, then I'm sure Zoink can as well. We've already seen Zoink tackle levels like this with the Speed Hack Demon List. He's used to doing these kind of side quest things by altering already existing levels. So again, I don't see why he couldn't do it with this. Before I end the video, I do think I kind of want to call out Addious and anyone who's done runs on levels of this difficulty that are nearly invisible to just tell us how much more difficult a completely invisible version would be compared to a visible version. From what I've gathered, the barely visible versions are a decent bit harder than the originals, but if you've practiced the click pattern for levels like these over and over again, it's actually not too much of a difference, because it's just engraved in your brain so much. However, I don't actually know how hard a completely invisible one compares, because I don't know how much those very faint objects can help with your sense of awareness in the level. I don't know how much that takes into effect, so it would be interesting to hear from one of the people that actually has progress on these kind of levels. So yeah, huge shout out to Addious. He posts relatively consistently during spam challenges. Like, look at that. What is that? What am I looking at there? But yeah, so if you want to go support this guy, you can do it. I don't really have much more to say. But yeah, that is all for me. Thanks for watching, and peace.